Hello, good evening. Welcome to Chicks with MD's new fireside chat. I'm Lisa Whitty Bradley. I'm just going to talk a little bit, introduce myself while people are starting to dial in. I am the CEO and founder. I'm a board certified plastic and reconstructive surgeon. And just to give you a little bit of background about me and why I even care about this topic of disability insurance and the essentials to know to protect your finances and your profession in the event of getting sick, is that about 4.5 years into my plastic surgery practice, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And this happened while I was going from a multi-specialty surgical group to a solo practice. And it happened in that transition period. So I didn't have hospital privileges. I hadn't finished going through interviews for practice loans. I was still setting up office space. All of this happened in that narrow period of going from that multi-specialty group, leaving one town and going to another, transporting my family, everything. And at that time, I had no really reliable revenue outside of some locum work or temporary work that I was doing. So my husband and I, we had a under 1-year-old baby, and we had to figure out what to do. And why did we not go under? Why did we not suffer the circumstances that afflicts the majority of people who file bankruptcy in this country, which is from medical problems? The reason why we survived is because we had set up a safety net around ourselves. And part of that was my disability insurance. When I was diagnosed, I had 3 disability policies. 2 were privately owned, and I got the first one when I was a second-year surgical resident, and then the third policy was actually through the American College of Surgeons. Once I was board certified, they just sent me a thing in the mail that said, hey, you want some disability insurance? You don't have to take an exam, anything like that, and I did it. And that really, all of those things really helped in terms of generating revenue while I was recovering from this initial diagnosis. And then on top of that, what really secured us was that, number one, we did not take out many deductions on our tax forms, so we had a substantial tax return. We had no car payments. Both of our cars were paid for, and we had savings, and I had 2 retirement accounts just from that 4.5 years in that multi-specialty group. And then on top of that was that we didn't have any credit cards. We had paid all of that off, and we were living below our means, which unfortunately is an affliction of people in medicine and outside medicine, is to live outside of their means, or to live just pushing it to your almost paycheck to paycheck. And we didn't do that. So all of those things were a blessing for us. And so it was great that I had this disability insurance, but it was also critical that we had created a safety net for ourselves and did not have many financial obligations. Now, take in mind everything that I just told you, and then on top of that, within a year of all of this transpiring, within a week, both of our cars died. So, being that we had not been putting out this extra expense on, pricey luxury vehicles, we were okay. When those cars died, we were both pissed off, but we were okay financially. So getting back to the disability coverage, there are certain key things that you just need to know. The first is, what kind of disability coverage do you need? Now, take in mind that you can't just take out a maximum amount of disability coverage, like, well, I'm going to take out enough so that I could live like a neurosurgeon when I wasn't practicing like a neurosurgeon. That's not how it works. When you file a claim, you have to provide the disability company with all of your CPT codes, so how you've been billing for procedures and office visits and all of those things for 3 years, or for as long, if you haven't been practicing up to 3 years, for however long you've been practicing. But usually it's 3 years of CPT codes, and then your W-2 or your tax documents. So you have to submit all of those things to justify getting those benefits. And the other thing you need to make sure you know through your disability company is, number one, how do they define disability? So you want to know, do you have an any occupation policy, or do you have an own occupation policy? An own occupation policy means I'm a plastic surgeon. So they could not just say to me, well, you're board certified in plastic surgery and general surgery, which I am. They couldn't just say, well, just go back to doing gallbladders and appendectomies. That wasn't going to work, because I had own occupation coverage. So because I could not perform the tasks of a plastic surgeon, they had to reimburse me based on, number one, once again, those CPT codes, which showed, revealed that I was doing plastic surgery level procedures and care. So you need to know how your disability company defines disability. Any occupation versus own occupation. Any occupation means that what they'll tell you is, if you're a pilot and you don't have own occupation, or if you're a plastic surgeon and you don't have own occupation, they can just say, well, then you can just go teach plastic surgery, and whatever you generate off of that should be adequate for your existence. That's the difference between own occupation and any occupation. Like, for example, for a pilot, if a pilot has own occupation, if they can't fly, you have to pay them. If they have any occupation, then they can say, well, you can do flight simulation school, or you can, teach flight school or whatever, and make money off of that. We're not going to pay you your full benefit. So you need to know whether or not you have own occupation, any occupation. Other critical things that you need to know is how, in addition to the CPT codes that you submit, is how else do they calculate your benefit? Is it just what's listed on your W-2? Are you getting some of your salary from bonuses or some other way that is not being revealed on your W-2 form? Because if that's the case, you need to disclose that to the disability company up front. Like, hey, this is how I get part of my salary is generated off of, dividends from companies or whatever. And, consultation fees that may not show up on my W-2s, whatever it is. So just make sure that you discuss that with your disability company, so it's not like, oh, well, that doesn't really apply. We're not going to pay you for that revenue. Other things that you want to know about your disability policy is what's the elimination period? So the elimination period is how many days after you've been diagnosed with whatever disability, how many days until they cut you a check and you start seeing your benefits. And on average, it's about 90 days. However, there are some policies where the elimination period is anywhere from 30 days to 120 days. So you want to make sure that you know these things, because if you don't have savings, and there's no way that you can cash out on anything, there's no way you can cash out on a retirement fund early or whatever, you're gonna be in trouble financially. So you want to know what that elimination period is. And on average, it's about 90 days. The other thing you want to know is, if you become permanently disabled, how long are they going to pay you benefits? Some companies, it's 5 years, 10 years. What you want it to be is until the age of retirement, 65, so that hopefully you have some retirement accounts, and then you can start tapping into those things. So know what the length of the contract is. Other things that you want are cost of living adjustments. Your benefits should go up every year. It's going to be a minuscule amount, but it goes up over time. And if you're disabled for 30 years, you need to have that cost of living adjustment. Other things that you want to know about that disability policy. Oh, make sure that it's cancelable. So make sure that they're not just going to say, oh, you know what, you got really sick, we're not covering you. Or, you know, if they require you to have additional physical exams or screenings or whatever, you know, the insurance companies, they are built not to reimburse folks. So you want to know that this is a non-cancelable policy. Also, how have you been paying those disability premiums before you were sick? Was this something that your employer was paying with pre-tax dollars, or was it something that was coming from post-tax dollars, like what you were paying after with your salary? So if it's pre-tax dollars, that means that if you have to file a claim, when you get that money, it's taxable. And if you've paid with post-tax dollars, so if you've gotten a paycheck and then your premiums come from that money after you've gotten your paycheck, that money has already been taxed. So that means that if you file a claim and you have paid with post-tax dollars on your premiums, then they cannot tax that money. Okay? So if you can, pay your premiums with post-tax dollars, that means they've already been taxed. That means if you ever have to file a claim, when you get those benefits, they are not taxable. Okay? The other thing you need to know, especially for women, is that we have a higher rate of filing claims and becoming either temporarily or permanently disabled, which means that our premiums that we pay for our policies are usually higher. So you want to see if you can find a gender-neutral policy. Hey, Bonnie, I see you out there, Dr. Bonnie. I can't really see if folks are online or not, but I think I'm having a problem with my connection. But thanks for tuning in. So we talked about pre- and post-tax dollars, gender-neutral policy if you can. I think we've gone through everything. So how your disability company calculates your benefit, pre- and post-tax dollars. Now, the other question is, how do you know, like when you sit down with your financial advisor, that's right, gender neutral policies are essential. So when you sit down with your financial advisor, which everybody should have, even before you've signed a contract, you should have a financial advisor, an attorney, and an accountant, all who specialize in medicine, if you're in the field of medicine, or if you're not in medicine, whatever the field is, you want to have that squad, that team of people, you want them to be specialized in your field. You don't want a real estate attorney, negotiating your disability policies and helping you with your contracts. That's not the role of a real estate attorney. They'll be able to get you a great home, but they're not going to be the best people to get you these essentials for your life. So make sure you have that team of people, your squad. Get it when you're young and healthy. Okay, you don't need these things when you're sick, because then you don't even qualify for this stuff. So you want to get a policy as soon as you can. So when you're in residency, I would recommend having disability insurance, life insurance. Make sure your health insurance is great. That's right, got to have your squad. A lot of people, I'm doing this post because a lot of folks have reached out to me through personal message or direct message asking a lot of questions about this, and their main concern is paying a consultation fee for an attorney or for a financial advisor. The amount for a initial consultation should either be free or it should be minimal. Or those funds it should be like, if you sign up with us, these funds will be directed towards ... Hey, Mom, thanks for joining. So you want to make sure that you have a team that they are skilled in medicine or whatever your area of specialty is. And you want to make sure that they're not price gouging you from the very beginning. A lot of folks have reached out to me, and the fees that some of these financial advisors and accountants are charging is ridiculous. So talk to your peers. Feel free to message me. Also, tonight's sponsor is Beyond the Exam Room, and Dr. Simpson Mason is on the line. You can definitely, I would go to their website, beyondtheexamroom.co, and make sure that you sign up. Look at their modules. They have all of this information and more that will help you navigate this whole financial and medical legal mumbo jumbo that unfortunately nobody teaches us about during training or during medical school. Other things that you want to know, get it during training. A lot of folks are always asking me about, when should I get this? The earlier the better, like with any type of insurance. Also, if you're smoking, stop smoking. If you you want to have just a moderate amount of alcohol intake, and also if you have been treated for medical problems in the past, that doesn't mean that you can't get adequate coverage. It doesn't mean that you're not insurable. It means that you need to touch bases with your physician or whoever your healthcare provider is, and then also I would talk with your malpractice company. You have a representative that deals specifically with your accounts, and you want to talk to your financial advisor. Find all of these things that and calculate what your risk is, and then you can start thinking about, number one, what coverage do you need? Thanks, Doc. What type of coverage do you need, and how do you go about getting the best coverage? Also, if you're in an area where you don't feel like you have access to other colleagues, or you don't feel comfortable reaching out over Facebook, contact your state bar association for lawyers, and sometimes they'll have access to accountants or financial advisors as well, who specialize in physicians. And if that state bar association can link you with attorneys that specialize in physicians, then they usually have a team of folks that they work with, and then they can refer you to folks. But don't just feel like you have to be stranded. And with physicians, especially the ones that reach out to me, these are folks who unfortunately have already been diagnosed, are already in dire straits. So please pass on this information to the folks that you know who may need this information, especially if you're training residents, if you're training fellows, if you have access to medical students. The earlier they know these things, the better. And then I wanted to give you some critical websites to know and to share. So for sure, check out my website. It's www.chickswithmds.com. I have modules just for physicians on contract negotiations, matching in the residency programs. I'm also going to do one off of this post with disability coverage. Also, Beyond the Exam Room, which we talked about, essential. I mean, Dr. Simpson Mason has created this entire enterprise to educate and empower physicians, and it is so needed. So please, I'm gonna Dr. Simpson Mason, put your if you're still on the line, put your website up there, please, and also your social media links so that folks can follow you. Also, to find out additional information on disability coverage, medicaleconomics.modernmedicine.com. I suggest for all physicians and healthcare providers that they subscribe to this site, because not only do they have great information on disability, they have updates on all types of different financial, medical, economic, and political issues going on in healthcare. So I recommend that you subscribe to that site. Also, disabilitiescanhappen.org and also Medscape. They all of those sites have critical resources regarding medical economics, finance in medicine, business in medicine, that so much we do not learn in training and practice, unfortunately. Thank you. There we go. BeyondTheExamRoom.co. Excellent. So once again, just to go over why my husband and I didn't sync when I got diagnosed is, number one, we didn't have an excessive amount of debt. We had paid off all of our credit cards. We were living below our means. We had our cars were paid off, and we had savings. I had two. Hey Jamie, how are you? So, and we had two retirement accounts, and we took the minimal amount of deductions on our tax forms, so we had a pretty good tax return, which we'd been doing for a few years. And even with that, I still had a tremendous amount of things. We had student loans to pay off. We had all of these different things. We had two households that we were paying for. And, life happens. I had a lot of medical bills. So a lot of that savings, it went straight into debt that we rapidly accumulated because I was sick. So it's really essential that you have a safety net around yourself, because like I was saying earlier, the majority of folks who file bankruptcy in America, it's because of medical problems. It's because they've, been diagnosed with cancer, or they've had a massive heart attack or a stroke, and they were the primary breadwinner in the home. So you have to create a safety net around yourself and your family in the event that this happens. I know that folks think that they're not going to get sick, but 1 in 4 people, 20-year-olds, by the time they're retired, 1 out of 4 20-year-olds will have had either a temporary or permanent disability by the time they retire. So that's a quarter of the population. And so you need to know and protect yourself. And then with physicians, with female physicians, it's close to 30% by the age of 35 have had either a temporary or permanent disability. So you have to protect yourself. And that's also why premiums for women are higher. That's why you want to try and find a gender neutral policy. So if you guys have any questions, Jamie, I know you're a future doc, so I'm so glad you tuned in. So basically, Jamie, by the time you start training, meaning residency, even before if you decide to go into practice, when you're in residency, you should already have a disability policy. You want to make sure your life insurance is intact, your health insurance plans are solid as they can be in this day and age. And you want to make sure that your family is protected and your life is protected. And so that's why I was giving this talk on disability coverage. And so essentials on that disability policy, just before I sign off, you want to make sure you have cost of living adjustments. You want to make sure it goes to age 65, its own occupation coverage, meaning that if you go out and you train to become a trauma surgeon, you want to make sure that if you can't do the job of a trauma surgeon, whether that's working in the ICU or taking people emergently to the operating room or whatever it is that is critical to the role of a trauma surgeon, if you can't do those things, then they have to reimburse you. If you have something called any occupation, then basically they can say, well, you can't do trauma surgery, but you can go teach medical students, so we're not going to pay you. So you want to make sure that you have that own occupation coverage. And then you want to make sure that you have, what your elimination period is, which means how long does it take from you getting diagnosed with a disability to when they start paying you your benefits. That usually is 90 days, but can go anywhere from 30 to 120 days, which is another reason why you need to make sure that you have an emergency fund. And usually people recommend that you have about 6 months of emergency funds, and my husband and I did have that. So it's essential to have those things, because if you don't have anything coming in, your debt, the stuff that you have going out, your mortgage, or all of those monthly expenses, they still have to be paid every month. The other thing that I think we all need to do, which I started doing again, was keeping a budget, a monthly budget. How much do we have coming in and what's going out? And believe me, if you start keeping a monthly budget, you're going to be like, there's a whole lot of money going missing. And you know what it is? I'm going to TJ Maxx. I'm going to Target. Like that stuff eats up a whole lot of money. So keep a monthly budget, because that's how they're going to calculate how much you need in terms of insurance coverage anyway. So good things to have. Other things are, how are you paying for your disability premiums? Is it with pre or post-tax dollars? If you pay with pre-tax dollars, that means that the money hasn't been taxed yet, which means that if you ever file a claim, then you're going to have to pay taxes on your benefits that you receive. If you pay your disability premiums with post-tax dollars, meaning you get a paycheck and then from that money you pay for your premiums, then that's post-tax dollars, which means that if you ever have to file a claim, hey Janelia, how are you? If you ever have to pay a claim, then those monies, that benefit cannot be taxed because it's already been taxed previously. Other things that you want to know is, how does your disability company define disability? And it varies across the board. So you want to make sure that that's been disclosed. Make sure you have coverage until age 65. Also, that it's adjustable, that you're getting a cost of living adjustment, and also that it's non-cancelable, because a lot of times if you get sick, if you have to revisit these contracts before you ever file a claim, if it's a cancelable policy, then these insurers can say you're too high risk and we don't really care how much in premiums you've ever paid, we're dropping you. So you want to make sure that the contract is non-cancelable from the very beginning. So Janelia, we're about done, but please watch the replay and share with folks. It's essential to have this disability coverage. I know it's not a sexy topic, but it's so essential. And I'm trying to prevent folks from having disasters if they ever get ill. And 1/4 of people are going to have a disability from the general population. And then in the medical field, it's even higher. It's at least about 10 points higher on average. So just make sure you know these things. Pass on this information. Next week, I'm probably going to do, I think I'm going to just break down the squad and who needs to be on your financial team. So please share this information. Take care. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.